Morning, everybody. My name is Betty Burkhalter. I am the Disaster Response Coordinator in the Iowa Mission District. I was invited to come today to speak to you about disaster response. You guys probably all know Terry Doyle. She's your Disaster Response Coordinator here in, I think it's called the Great Rivers Mission District. Is that right? Okay. Yeah, so Terry's here today too. My husband, Gary, and I are familiar with this area somewhat. He was pastor up in Danforth for about 3.5 years. So he would come down here and participate in tech study with the other area pastors when Jim Lehman was here. As I read through and reflected on the scriptures for today, there were some key passages that I felt really spoke directly to disaster response. In Isaiah, we heard about being a servant, trusting God for my reward. My work seems to be useless, and as a servant, being told what to do and how to speak. Psalms reminds me that our work is for God and all of his people around the world. Remember the parable of the Good Samaritan? Who are our neighbors? In 2 Corinthians, we're reminded that because our love of Christ controls us, we are no longer living for ourselves. We are to be Christ's ambassadors. And perhaps above all, John reminds us to pray. So what's the connection to disaster response? As we gather the various items for the kits, sew these beautiful quilts, deliver supplies to the warehouses or disaster sites, we are not doing it for ourselves so that we may feel better about our shortcomings. We are not doing it for the praise of others. We are acting as God's servants, doing his work for his people, even those people that don't know him. When supplies are delivered to disaster sites, the names and addresses of the donor congregations are generally written outside on the boxes of quilts or kits. Some people even put the names of their congregations on the flood buckets, or I guess we're calling them cleaning buckets. And we include devotions in our kits and buckets. We can use fabrics in our quilts that have a religious message. We hand out Bibles. And when we hand out quilts, we ask if we can pray with them and for them. The shirts many of us wear identify us as the North American Lutheran Church. In order for a response team to be poised to respond on behalf of the Mission District, we need to be disaster ready. What does disaster ready mean? That means we need to be prepared to act immediately when a disaster strikes. We can only do that if our warehouses are stocked. Did you know that we only have 17 warehouses across the United States? And that means that it's not uncommon for a warehouse in one district to be called on to restock another district's warehouse that's been depleted by a disaster. That's why stocking our warehouse is an ongoing challenge. We even call on our neighboring mission districts to help us out to deliver supplies. Just this summer, I reached out to Terry and said, hey, there was that flooding in Moline and Davenport. All of our warehouses, our 2 Iowa warehouses, are at least 6 hours away. You guys are closer. Can you take some supplies? Terry jumped on the horn. She got some supplies there for us. And then shortly after that, there was the flooding up in Milwaukee. Milwaukee doesn't have a warehouse, but we have 2 in Iowa. One is only about 4 hours away from Milwaukee. We actually went to Milwaukee twice to deliver supplies for them. We also need to be properly trained. We need to keep our trucks and trailers in good working order. We need to have volunteers available to jump in a truck and deliver supplies wherever they are needed. We need to be trained on how to repair and rebuild homes. We also need to be trained on how to pray with someone who's experienced a devastating loss. That's a lot of training. How do you get this training? In Caldwell, Ohio, we now have an adult and youth training and retreat center. Members of your congregation can reserve that center for training sessions. Terry Doyle is your disaster response coordinator here in the Great Rivers Mission District. You can reach out to Terry to learn more about training for you individually or your congregation or your mission district. You could consider hosting a training here at Emmanuel for your mission district. Training is generally 2 hours on a Friday night and 6 hours on a Saturday. We also have online spiritual Christian care training to learn how to pray with people. As you know, disasters come in many forms. Here in the Midwest, we're most familiar with the natural disasters of tornadoes and flooding. Our East Coast and Southern Coast families know way more than they want to know about hurricanes. And then there's fires, out west generally. Some types of events that we don't generally think about as a disaster are hostile and technological disasters. Examples would be community violence, racial and ethnic conflicts, and terrorism. There's also hazardous materials being distributed in the air and the water and on the land as a result of a railroad or highway and airplane accidents. You remember what happened in Ohio a couple of years ago. That was a real mess. I don't know that we're still responding to that area, but we responded in that area for several months after that to help them with their cleanup. The NALC disaster response teams are very busy with natural disasters, and there's other agencies who specialize in the hostile and technological disasters. While we're not first responders, we do get to a site as soon as possible after a disaster to deliver supplies. After emergency relief, agencies such as FEMA, the Red Cross, Salvation Army, as well as insurance companies have been on site. The NALC disaster response teams return about 70 days later to see where we can help out. We could be in an area for several years after a disaster. What can you do personally to be servants of God for a disaster? Our scripture lessons for today tell us to pray and keep in mind whom it is that we are working for, Christ and our neighbor. Continue to keep the warehouses stocked, donating items, cash, and gift cards. Volunteer to drive supplies to a disaster site or to another warehouse. Attend training in Ohio or sponsor in-house training here at Emmanuel for your mission district. Consider working through the online spiritual Christian care training. During the adult Sunday school hour, I'll be talking more about congregational preparedness. What are you as a congregation going to do if a disaster strikes your building? And individual preparedness. What should you be doing at home to be ready for a disaster? Thank you.